Maldives is one of the very close and important neighborhood of India. It's a member of SARC grouping also, where India, Maldives and other South Asian countries have been cooperating for a very long time. But we'll talk about SARC later on. But to talk about Maldives and India bilateral relationship, we are joined by Maldives Foreign Minister Abdulla Shahid. He is in India and he has a very important meetings also. So to start with, Mr. Shahid, how has been your daily visit this time? What has been your meeting? If you could throw some light on the current visit and its purpose.
Always a pleasure to be here in Delhi. I had very productive meetings with External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar yesterday. Dr. Jaishankar and I reviewed the development program that is ongoing between the two countries. Also, we shared our views on international major issues and regional issues of common concern.
India has been a development partner to Maldives for a very long time now. In fact, ever since with the new presidency, with President Soli, we have seen this partnership growing in many areas. If you could just elaborate some of the important aspect of this, collaboration, which is becoming part of development in Maldives. Like what are the areas that India has been investing? What are the areas that you want more investment and more expertise and collaboration from Indian side?
Well, Indian assistance in our economic social development has many sectors and ranging from very large projects such as the Greater Male Connectivity Project to Hanimadu Airport development, the Addu Airport upgrading project, the establishment of water and sanitation in 34 islands, the Addu road development project, MIFCO upgrading project, lane reclamation, and the list goes on. Also, at the same time, we have smaller projects, what we call the grant assistance for high impact community development projects, HICDP projects. Yesterday, we signed 9 new MOUs ranging from development of small fish canning, fish processing plant in Diggaru to street lighting yes. in Gafalif Konde to Shaveni Kanditi in Wali Court and many more.
Of course.
So there is a very large spectrum of activities ongoing. Also, one of the areas where it is not even enough emphasis is given and not celebrated enough is the contribution of India to our human resource development.
Of course.
Even during last year itself, we had close to 1,000 Maldivians come and for different types of training, in-person training here in India. So it's been outstanding.
Also, capacity building has been a part of in both the nations' collaboration. Maldives happens to be at a very uniquely positioned geographical region, and there is a lot of interest in of many countries in defense and security set up around Maldives. But then there are issues that concerns Maldives also. It's issues of climate change, issues of food security, inflation, global supply chain. So, do you think that in the attention, the enough attention is given to Maldives for its own concern, or the major countries want to have partnership with Maldives for their own interests?
Well, we have been raising our concern for climate change since the mid-1980s.
Yes.
And it's been frustrating to see inaction on the part of the international community on climate change. But more recently, we have seen some progress, but not even close enough to satisfy the small island developing states like the Maldives. We are looking forward to COP28 in Abu Dhabi, hoping that there will be solid action. We were instrumental in getting the loss and damage fund established at Sharm el-Sheikh. We are in the transitional committee there of the loss and damage fund, making sure that by the time we reach Abu Dhabi, we will be able to have some tangible results of this process.
The world is seeing this fast-moving geopolitical and geoeconomic scenario ever since this Russia-Ukraine conflict has started. It's been more than 1 year. But then there has been implication in terms of economic, strategic, and defense architecture around the world. How does Maldives see this conflict happening in Europe? And what are the effect that Maldives has suffered due to that conflict going on for more than 1 year now?
The world is so interconnected today that war anywhere impacts everyone. Yes, the war is being fought in Europe, very far from us, and many may think that a small country in the middle of the Indian Ocean will have no impact of this war felt. However, overnight we started feeling the impact. Before the war, 4% of our tourist arrivals were from Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the war began, there was the zero. Before the war, 17% of our tourist arrivals were from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a great impact on it.
So collectively, 1/5 of your tourist incoming has been
Today,
impacted.
the 17% has come down to 11.5%. Okay. So war anywhere impacts everyone. The global fuel crisis, the food crisis that has come about due to the war in Ukraine is felt by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
When Russia invaded Ukraine, there were over 50 Maldivian students studying in Ukraine. And we had to try and get these students out of Ukraine. I'm very glad that because of our good relations with everyone, we were able to very quickly get Maldivian students out. Special expression of gratitude to Hungary for their valuable assistance.
Of course, I mean, we're talking about the security scenario in and around Maldives, which is of interest to several countries who wants to have some sort of stake in the Indian Ocean region. How does India-Maldives partnership work in that dimension of security and defense cooperation between the two countries and also in the region?
Well, the countries in the region and Maldives and India together, the reality is that we are stuck here.
Of course.
We are going to be part of the Indian Ocean. We live from the Indian Ocean, and it is in our interest to maintain peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indian Ocean region. If we look at the past history of the Indian Ocean, we have seen foreign powers, different powers come to this region, colonize the entire area and countries, and they have the luxury of leaving Maldives and India and Seychelles and Mauritius and others behind. So this is where we are destined to live. So every effort has to be made to make sure that the interest of the littoral states of the Indian Ocean is first. And that is why we have partnered with India and Sri Lanka and others in the Colombo Security Conclave. Our foremost desire should be always to make sure that we do not let anyone import foreign conflicts into this region.
So talking about those conflicts, I mean, Indian Ocean region has been, especially India, China, they have been trying to dominate because of multiple reasons. Most of the oil that is imported to India is largely dependent on the import of oil, and the trade happens through these routes. There are issues of piracy, also smuggling, narcotics, and other issues that needs a lot of surveillance and high-graded equipments and high-tech instruments. How do you, as a small country, as you mentioned, deal with that of not having enough resources or trying to procure much of it through your friends and maintain the peace and stability in the region as well? Because you are not as resourceful, as much problem that you are facing being a small island country in the much conflicted Indian Ocean region.
Yes, we are a small country, but with a large ocean area, and that makes us more vulnerable. So is the other countries in the region, the island states. They have large expanses of ocean, making our borders very porous. And it is an area where the non-state actors such as pirates and drug traffickers and others find very lucrative. A country may be very resourceful, but still when it comes to non-state actors like terrorists and others, you will not be able to confront them without cooperating with others. And that is why it is essential that we have a level of international cooperation in the Indian Ocean to counter all these non-state actors from creating this instability in our region.
Of course, sir, as you mentioned about this, being a small island, but then you also mentioned other island nations which are part of this Indian Ocean region. And broadly speaking, a collaborative effort is needed when all these smaller islands and their issues are addressed or they are heard at the international level. India is trying to, collectively call out the issues that this global south is facing, and they are not heard enough at the international level. I mean, recently Prime Minister Modi had held this global south, Voice of Global South event also, where so many countries, I think including Maldives, was represented well. Do you think that the world body, especially the bigger bodies like United Nations or other WTO or World Bank, right, or major bodies which have resources and who decides and dictates terms where these resources will be put, should have more representation from the countries like small island countries or the African nations or other continents which are not well represented in these nations?
Well, I completely agree with you. Unless the small island nations and the LDCs are given an opportunity around the table, and unless our voices are heard, then we will not be getting what we are required. And that is why Maldives, as a small country, continues to voice our concerns very loudly. And also we try to form into groups. The Alliance of Small Island States is an initiative taken by the Maldives in 1987, and we have moved from a group of 14 countries to where it is today, where at the climate debates, the Alliance's voice is the strongest.
Of course.
And likewise, we will be working with other like-minded countries to come into groups of countries to raise our voice.
Talking about this collaboration and groupings where the concerns of smaller countries can be raised, SARC happened to be a very strong regional grouping, and that worked for decades. With the current situation where the meetings have not been taking place for a very long time now, Maldives, as a foreign minister of Maldives, how much concerned you are that these smaller groupings in the region are not working, and what future do you see of this smaller regional group of SARC?
The success of SARC now depends on not forgetting the initial understanding we had when SARC was formed. The initial understanding at the level of the leaders in 1985 was to agree on agreeable issues. And not to let the disagreements overcome the agreements. And that is why SARC has so many technical committees at the expert level. So if the expert level committees continue to work and progress, there will be a time in the future when the broader environment will be more conducive to bring us together to discuss and find ways out of the disagreements. So basically, not to be disheartened, but to make maximum effort to continue to promote the areas of agreement.
Okay. Now, if I could take you back a little to your domestic issues. The general elections are going to happen in the days to come. Then there are, domestic issue of your country is to sometimes divided into, a support group of India and anti-support group of India, or like there are Chinese, some of the groups which are believed to be backed by other countries also. I mean, how do you see, I mean, these groupings, or there has been recently group, India Out movement also, which kind of created some concern over the safety of the Indian officials present in Maldives. How does your government deal with that? How does your government also deal with some of the issues of radicalism or some of the, smaller terrorist attack sort of things that has happened? So what are the security steps that you have taken in the recent months so that these things do not occur?
India Out campaign is led by former President Yamin and his supporters in PPM. But it is heartening to see that PPM members in its entirety does not subscribe to this campaign. Why I say it is, for the last 3 years, they have been trying to drum up this hatred. But then the people of Maldives are much more wiser. The relationship between the people of our two countries is much more solid. And that is why for the last 3 years, after so much work by PPM, they have been able to bring out onto their release of India Out only a handful of people. So it's a effort by a fringe group who has nothing to sell to the public. It's election time. What PPM should be doing is come out with solid policies. Rather, they have come out and tried to sell hatred only. And Maldivians are much more smart. They will not buy into hatred.
So do you agree that these are just a vested political agenda proposed by
Nothing else.
Yamin, and no roots have, like, people, of course, do not support?
Well, the facts speak for themselves. For the last 3 years, they have been trying to get this campaign take off the ground. But it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. But recently, those attacks, they tried to disrupt some of the events that the Embassy of India was having. So somehow
this can be done by one individual himself, right? But the numbers are not to be seen. The energy to create this into a huge movement is not happening. And when you ask yourself why, the simple answer is that the cooperation between the people of two countries is too good.
Okay. Neighborhood first has been the policy of current Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In fact, when the new president took over, he had gone to the swearing-in ceremony as well. How do you rate the last years of President Soli as in terms of India-Maldives relationship? Whether it has become more stable, it has taken off to a wider and more better domain?
India-Maldives relationship has never been better. This has solidified into a relationship based on mutual respect and confidence at the very top leadership level and throughout the system and with the people of both our countries. The foundations that has been laid during President Solih's presidency is going to have long-lasting, very productive results in the relationship between our two countries.
Okay. Before I wind up, will the President Ibrahim Soli become the next president of Maldives also in the next election? Do you see a prospect of him being re-elected?
President Solih is contesting the election, and given his track record of delivering on his promises, President Solih is going to win this election.
Okay. One question that I just missed, that was in UNSC. You have been part of United Nations for a very long time and a very crucial role. How do you see the effort that India is trying to pitch and India is trying to raise about this whole reform that United Nations should have, and the reflection of the society of the current world order that should be very much part of United Nations and its various important committees, especially United Nations Security Council? So what has been the ground realities, why it is not happening, where the issues are stuck? Because for decades we have been hearing these things that the reform should be there, but reform is actually not moving forward.
Maldives was one of the 9 countries who initiated the reform of the Security Council way back in the 1970s. And after so many years, it would be fair to say that we are in the same position still. But the failures of the Security Council, more recently in the case of Ukraine, has come about because the Security Council does not reflect the current political realities of the world. Security Council is a product of the past. For example, when you look at the Security Council, one continent is entirely absent when you look at the permanent seats of the Security Council, Africa.
Of course.
Yes. A large number of countries with so much economic power. We need the Security Council to reflect the current political realities. We need to correct the historical injustice that has been done to Africa. We need countries like India, like Japan, Brazil, Germany, powerhouses to be represented in the Security Council as permanent members. And that is why Maldives backs Indian candidacy to become a permanent member of the Security Council.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shahid. We can hope that these major reforms would happen and these global bodies would have reflection of the global realities of current time, and especially of smaller countries, and their concerns would be addressed. It was really nice and pleasant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.